Walk in up the ramp, please.
Okay, right up to the front. Turn to your right. Have a seat on the bench and we'll be right with you. We got one shoplifter for you, Walt.
Shoplifters in this country are stealing enormous amounts of merchandise. Today, shoplifting is a multi-billion-dollar problem.
Take everything out of your pockets, put it on the counter.
There are substantial differences between modern-day shoplifting and merchandise theft of days gone by. In the past, stores were smaller. Most items were kept behind counters or in display cases, and the proprietor was frequently someone who knew each of his customers by name. But in the last 30 years, this country has moved to a different mode of selling, the convenient self-service method. Our self-service system has revolutionized the marketing industry and is the envy of the world. Stores have grown larger in number and size, and so has the variety and selection of merchandise. This self-service system gives consumers a chance to browse and inspect the merchandise. It's really an honor system of buying.
Will that be it today? That will be $17.95, please. All right, out of 20. $17.98, 18, and 2 are 20. Thank you.
However beneficial self-service has become, it's not perfect. The one drawback to the honor system is that it has increased the opportunity to steal. It has recently been discovered that shoplifting has addictive potential, and an estimated 50% of these people who are stealing have a shoplifting habit.
8 to the China department, please. 8 to China department.
Shoplifters experiment with smaller items first. Consumers with a shoplifting habit seldom start by actually saying, "I'm going to take something from a store once a week or once a day." But eventually that's what they do. Once successful at shoplifting smaller items, they often develop an appetite for more costly items. A shoplifter can be anyone. Families and employees do not notice any unusual behavior. It's a quiet habit without any visible symptoms. Most department stores earn 3 to 5 cents on each dollar's worth of merchandise they sell, while most supermarkets, like this one, earn 1 cent on the dollar. This package of steak sells for $6 in this store. This store must sell almost $600 worth of food to make up for the theft of this one $6 package of steak. That's 99 $6 steaks. The earnings from these 99 will go to pay for the one package this man has stolen. A relatively small number of customers stealing from a store like this every day can put an establishment out of business. Shoplifting is not only a merchant's problem, but it is also a social problem affecting families, the cost of living, wages, and jobs. The escalating retail business failure rate is due partly to today's highly inflationary economy. That's true. But many experts are now linking most of those business failures to inventory shrinkage, losses due to shoplifting. Losses are so high, retailers can no longer absorb all the cost, and so some of it is passed on to the consumer. Today, 5 to 7 cents of every consumer dollar spent in a retail store goes to cover the cost of shoplifting. If she spends $50 a week on groceries, the price she pays for shoplifting will cost her anywhere from $130 to $182 a year. And remember, a family's yearly budget also includes clothing, drugstore goods, and hundreds of other items also affected by shoplifting.
38.42. Each one, 50, 65, and 68. Thank you.
Okay, we need to go over these figures right here and come up with a cumulative total.
All right, that's no
Okay?
problem.
Yeah.
Can I see for a minute?
You sure can. Be right back.
Because of this multi-billion-dollar problem, the merchants fighting for their right to stay in business are turning to more effective security measures.
Too many boxes.
Their employees are now trained to watch the shopping habits of people. And there are other personnel trained in store security in addition to guards and regular employees. These are people posing as ordinary shoppers who are really spotters. They carry two-way radios to alert management of shoplifting activity.
Boxes, I guess, down.
Fisheye mirrors are a familiar type of security device, as well as two-way mirrors. While they appear to shoppers as ordinary mirrors, security people watch from behind. Of the more sophisticated type security device is the electronic surveillance camera. Security personnel can watch shoplifting activity from a back room. Many stores are now using electronic tags to prevent shoplifting. Some tags are rather large, and they serve as a warning not to shoplift. Other tags are very small and may be hidden on the merchandise. If the tag is not removed, then an alarm sounds when the merchandise is carried past the electronic sensor at the front door. To the observer, it's impossible to tell which stores have minimum security and which stores have excellent security. While merchants do not want to offend the honest consumer with obvious deterrent devices, at the same time, they don't want to reveal their protection devices to shoplifters. This store has good security, which creates the illusion of having no security at all. This illusion frequently gives shoplifters the impression nobody's watching. When conditions appear to be right, other thought processes begin.
I spend lots of money here. They won't miss this one. Lots of people do it. Why should she get away with that? She's stealing.
Ma'am, may I help you?
It may come as a surprise to know that honest people can get caught in a shoplifting incident just because of poor shopping habits. She didn't mean anything by this, but she can be accused of shoplifting. Concealment is now considered presumption of guilt in many states, even when it occurs inside a store. Price tag switching, like switching contents in boxes, is out-and-out stealing. This man runs the risk of being apprehended.
Do you want to buy these?
Yeah, I'll take these.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. These seem to have the wrong price on them.
Oh, well, that's what they were marked. If that isn't what they cost, then I don't really want them. Thanks.
Okay.
An organization called Shoplifters Anonymous has developed specialized techniques to explain the big gamble involved in shoplifting. Lawrence A. Connor, president of Shoplifters Anonymous, is exploring the risks involved in shoplifting with a group of students.
I am now about to invite you to shoplift at my merchandise table. Before I do, I want to explain to you the three factors here: the odds of success or failure, the reward if you succeed, the penalty if you fail. Over this table, I have placed a television camera. At each end, there are people standing. Behind here is a two-way mirror. Now, there may be no one behind that mirror. This TV camera may be fake. These people may be ordinary customers. My merchandise table may have excellent security, or the security may be non-existent. I know the facts, but I'm not going to share them with you. If you want to gamble at this merchandise table, you must do so without knowing the odds of winning or losing. If you accept this condition, take the gamble and win, you get to keep any merchandise you have concealed. If, however, any one of these things represents active security, you will be caught, you will lose, and you must pay the penalty. Now let's discuss the penalty. I want the right to charge you with a crime, put you in handcuffs, place you in a squad car, transport you to the police station, then fingerprint and take photographs. I want the right to prosecute, to bring you into a courtroom, find you guilty, levy a fine, and make you pay court costs. Because you're a first offender, I will not require you to spend time in jail. However, I want the right to use this stamp on any diploma you have received for past scholastic achievement. I also want the right to use this stamp on any diploma you receive in the future. In addition, I want the right to tell everyone who hires you for the rest of your life that you're a convicted thief. This is the penalty you must pay if you take something from my merchandise table and get caught. Okay, let's gamble. Come on up and help yourself. Now, who gambles at my merchandise table?
No way, it's ridiculous.
No, that's stupid.
Let me explain the two things that made my invitation so objectionable. First, I insulted your intelligence by asking you to gamble without telling you the odds. Second, I added insult to injury by asking you to risk a whole lot for a relatively small reward. The illustrations I used were for dramatic purposes. However, shoplifting convictions can and do follow people for all of their lives. A store looks much less threatening than my merchandise table. However, the fact is that a shoplifter cannot tell the odds of winning or losing. It is virtually impossible to tell if anyone is watching. The layout of a store gives a sense of false security to many people who are tempted to steal. Nothing strips away this illusion like knowledge and intellect. I hope this is the lesson that you learned here at this merchandise table.
You now know more than the average person about shoplifting. With your new knowledge, how would you feel if your daughter, son, husband, wife, or even grandma or grandpa were caught shoplifting? How would you react to the moment?
Hello? Yes? Oh, no.
You will be helping your family and your community by sharing the following points with them. Shoplifting has strong addictive potential. It often becomes habit-forming. The high cost of shoplifting puts many stores out of business and eventually affects the jobs of honest working people. Good security gives the illusion of no security. A shoplifter must take a big risk for a relatively small reward without knowing the odds of getting caught. Poor shopping habits can be construed as shoplifting. Honest taxpayers are being forced to foot the bill for the people doing the stealing. Now that you know the facts, what can you do about it? If you see a shoplifting incident, report it and tell your family and friends what you've learned today. It's time for honest consumers to band together to help put an end to this expensive problem. And now, it's up to you.
Hi everybody, happy Monday. I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. That was a wonderful film about shoplifting. 1982, that was. I have quite a few films about shoplifting. It was the thing to do. Probably still is. Well, maybe not now. But, yeah, quite a few films I've done. I actually did a show. It was funny. It was right around Christmas, and I did a show at a local club, King, and it was AV Geeks Go Shopping was the theme and the title. But when people showed up, I actually showed them films about shoplifting, and then I made a DVD compilation called Steal This Disc, or was it Steal This DVD? Anyways, so I put it in different places throughout the club so that people could shoplift. They could practice their shoplifting skills based on what they saw. So there you go. Whose side am I on? Don't know. This next film that we're going to watch is a cornet film that was made for people, specifically young men, who were about to enter the military because they were drafted. Or they were enlisted. But basically this is a series of films that are trying to, one, talk about why you're going, two, to prep you for about what you're about to see and what you're about to deal with. This is, we saw Getting Ready morally. This is Getting Ready emotionally. Enjoy.
When you're in high school, you don't have too much trouble getting along. Oh, you have your ups and downs. Things happen. But you know pretty well what you can and can't do. There isn't very much about your life at school that's too difficult, emotionally. You know pretty well what to expect. Yes, most of the time, high school is a pretty comfortable place compared to this. When you're in service, you're going to have to find out again what you can and can't do. You won't know just what to expect. You'll have lots of adjustments to make. Sure, a situation like this is rough. But what are you going to do? You can't cut class, and you can't quit, and you can't talk back. Or if you do, this man just hasn't been able to adjust himself to taking orders. That's a pretty important part of military life, you know. It's one of the big adjustments you're going to have to make. Have you ever fired a rifle? For some people, it's fun. But fun isn't what you're training for in service. This is business. The business of life or death. Military training is education for war. Most of us hate war and the very idea of combat and violence. That's another big adjustment you'll have to make. Have you ever been homesick? Maybe you thought you never would be. When was the last time you cried? You'll say you gotta stop this. You're a man now, not a kid. But you can't help missing Mom and Dad, and your friends back home, and the things you were used to back in high school where life was pretty comfortable. That's another adjustment you're going to have to make. In time, this fellow will be okay. But when he entered service, he wasn't ready emotionally for the big change. How about you? Are you going to be ready when the time comes for you to meet these new situations? Will you be ready to obey orders and comply with military discipline? Will you be ready to take your part in education for war? Will you be ready to stand on your own, away from your family and friends? How about it? Can you make these adjustments without an emotional upset? Starting now, there's a way for you to get all this in perspective. Take stock of yourself. Think.
Well, how do I stack up emotionally? How about last week? Jim was giving out free advice about how to improve my grip. I didn't take it very well. I don't like criticism. How about taking orders? What about the time I was all dressed up for that big date? So, the car wasn't washed. Well, I should have seen to it. Why blame Dad? Who's going to do my work in service? The other day, Jane was playing dress-up with Mother's shoes and my baseball cap. Lose my temper easily, don't I? And then there was the accident. Boy, did I get worked up. Real panicky. Let's face it, I sure need a lot of self-discipline before I enter service.
That's right. Take stock of yourself, and then take action. You'll need time, but you can help yourself. An assignment is going up on the board. Orders, from the teacher to the class. But you don't much like taking orders. It annoys you when people tell you what to do or how to do something. All right. Now you can slip by most of the orders you get. But do you want to go on that way? Later on, taking orders will be expected of you, demanded of you. So now's the time to start practicing. Consider all your assignments as orders, and make it your business to follow them. Try to understand the real purpose and what your part is, and why the orders have to be followed to achieve that purpose. If you consider suggestions, advice, assignments as orders now, you'll adjust easier later on. Another part of getting ready for military discipline is developing self-discipline. If you usually duck your responsibilities, it'll pay you to start changing your ways. If there's a job to be done, get it started. Take on responsibility for getting certain things done around the house, at school, in your community. Even if it's a job you don't like, stick it out. Learn to take it. As long as it's your job, do it. Do your best at the jobs you take on, and take on new jobs. Look for things that you can be responsible for. Discipline yourself. Plan to do things, then do them. Later on, you'll have plenty of responsibilities that you'll have to manage. Learning to accept them now will help you over a big hurdle. Later on, you'll find it easier, too, if you've had some experience now being away from home. Have you ever gone off on a summer job with your friends and spent a night in the city on the way? You had a lot of problems, didn't you? Just being on your own. Being limited to the amount of money you could spend. Having to make all your own decisions. Having to make all your own arrangements. While you were away, your folks missed you, sure. But both they and you feel more confident now about that time later on, when you'll be away from home for a much longer period. Maybe you're thinking and worrying about combat, the violence and the dangers. Well, think about the men you know who have been through military service. Even though they served, many of them in wartime, few saw combat. Few had to use their combat training to defend their own lives, and very few of them were wounded. Think about it. Take the problem to church if you need help. Talk it over there. Get yourself straightened out. Yes, get yourself ready emotionally, so that when you're away from home, you can adjust to the new situation. Get yourself ready to take your part in education for war. And get ready for discipline and the military situation in general. Learn how to take it, for life in the service can be rough. Or it can be an interesting, new experience. Remember, others have been in service and made out all right. In fact, many millions of fellows like you have faced the same problems and met them successfully. And you can too, even better than they have, if you start now to get ready emotionally for what lies ahead.
Sorry about that. I was typing some things in. Thanks for the date check. It's all a big smear, and I forgot to update that, which I just did. Thank you also, Matthew, for buying some coffee for AV Geeks. That's a way that you can say that you care, is by caffeinating our nervous systems. Thank you for that. Yeah, so that was a pretty interesting film. And you know, like other Cornet films, this one is like, this is what's coming up. And honestly, this is just a series of questions. Are you going to do this? Are you going to be ready for this? Guess what? This might happen. Are you ready for it? Maybe you could do this. I don't know. There's no definite answers with this. And I'm happy that I didn't grow up with an active draft because I don't think that would have ended well. I'm not good at taking orders. I'm kind of bad at it, actually. So kudos to those in the military that can do it. It's great. I just not wired that way. All right, so this next film is I've shown other films that kind of talk about the similar thing, which is basically the safety in crossing railroad tracks. This was a big problem. It still is a big problem. We have a couple of active lines that come into Raleigh and go out of Raleigh, and I would say probably every 5 or 6 months there is some sort of traffic fatality or fatality where someone gets killed by trains. So it's still actively happening. So here is safety facts about crossing railroad tracks.
To the average motorist, a railroad crossing is an occasional annoyance where he sometimes has to sit for a short time watching the boxcars roll by, impatient to be on his way. But to the engineer, the man with his hand on the throttle in the passing freight, crossings are a source of constant anxiety. Every time he takes the train out, he can expect 1 or 2 near misses, close calls for someone who drives across the tracks when he shouldn't, and sometimes just barely gets away with it. It's no wonder that the typical engineer is so often pictured as the serious fatherly type. He sometimes prays a little when he sees a school bus approaching, wondering if the driver is going to stop with all those children. It's the law, but it's surprising how often school bus drivers forget to make their legal stop. However, it's the tank truck driver loaded with inflammables who fails to stop who poses the biggest threat to the engineer's own safety. He knows that few truck drivers and few engineers survive such fiery collisions. And if a passenger train is involved, the number of injuries and the loss of life can be nothing short of catastrophic. But whether his own safety is threatened or not, an engineer dreads all close calls at crossings. He knows that he is helpless to avert a tragedy should a driver misjudge his speed or the speed of the train. Suddenly, he may become the unwilling witness to one of the more than 1,500 deaths that occur at rail highway crossings each year. Unfortunately, there is no simple solution to this serious problem. Railroads have been working with it for some time. Witness this educational poster of the steam era. However, today's population explosion, the rapidly expanding highway system, and the mushrooming national automobile registration, now nearing the 100 million mark, have placed a new urgency on the whole problem of highway safety, including that at railroad crossings. Half a century ago, when the horse was still a common means of transportation, the motor car was already accounting for 10,000 deaths annually, with 1 out of 5 occurring at a railroad crossing. Today, while deaths on our modern high-speed highways have increased 5-fold, now over 50,000 annually, fatalities at railroad crossings have declined to about 3% of that total, a tribute to the effectiveness of the many thousands of railway markings, advance warning signs, crossbucks, wigwags, bells, gates, and grade separations installed over the years through the cooperative efforts of railroad and highway traffic engineers. But the railroad safety administrators believe that even one death at a crossing is too many, and they point to one other sobering fact. While 1 out of every 36 people in all highway accidents dies, 1 out of 4 dies at a crossing accident. It's a pretty uneven contest when you argue with the train. Both the railroad and the motorist have a responsibility at crossings, but the responsibility is different. The railroads involves before-the-time thinking. It must provide crossing protection of a permanent nature. Crossbucks, warning bells, flashing lights, and crossing gates. Advance warning signs are placed by the highway people. And the motorist, in turn, has the responsibility to be vigilant at the time, every time he approaches a railroad crossing. At the latest count, there were over 225,000 of these in the United States, roughly 1 crossing per mile of mainline railroad. While about 40,000 of the busier crossings are equipped with some form of automatic warning device or with crossing gates, the majority are protected with the advance warning sign and the familiar railroad crossbuck. The number of grade-separated crossings is still small. To give such treatment to all grade crossings, it has been estimated that it would cost nearly $100 billion, more than 3 times the total value of all the nation's railroads, or almost twice the federal funds spent on all highway construction since World War I. So it's apparent that neither the government or the railroads could take on the colossal job of separating all rail and highway traffic. However, there is a way of effectively reducing the death and injury toll at crossings as pointed out by the findings of the safety section of the Interstate Commerce Commission, now part of the new Department of Transportation. At the conclusion of a 3-year study of this problem, they found that the principal cause of grade crossing accidents is the failure of motor car operators to stop and exercise due care and caution, or to observe and comply with existing safety laws and regulations. The Commission also found that present safety regulations are reasonably adequate for the promotion of safe operations at grade crossings, provided they are effectively enforced. These conclusions support the long-time belief of many traffic experts that to reduce crossing accidents significantly, the motorist must become more familiar with the law at crossings, and he must be motivated to respect that law through its strict enforcement by city, county, and state police. In addition, the motorist must be thoroughly familiar with the various hazards present at crossings and must know how to avoid them. While the laws vary slightly from state to state, generally it is illegal for any person to drive a motor vehicle upon a railroad track at a public highway or street without taking proper precautions, enabling him to stop his vehicle not less than 15 feet from the nearest track should a train be approaching. Certain vehicles, of course, must stop at virtually every railroad crossing, whether a train is in sight or not. These include school buses, buses carrying passengers for hire, tanker trucks, and all other trucks loaded with explosives or inflammables. The law is also crystal clear about those flashing lights and warning bells that say a train is coming. The law says, stop. There is no difference between a flashing red light at a crossing and a flashing red light at an arterial stop. Both mean stop, then proceed only when it is safe to do so. Who are the motorists who get into trouble at crossings? First, there's Mr. Heavyfoot. Drives a little too fast for conditions, or maybe his brakes are faulty. Then there's Mr. Dreamer, who fails to notice boxcars ahead as big as billboards until it's too late. You know, it's a surprising fact that in 1 out of 3 crossing accidents, it's the auto that runs into the train. Overdriving one's headlights at night or dozing at the wheel are 2 other causes of accidents at crossings. And there's the impatient driver who swings around waiting traffic and the lowered gates directly into the path of a train. Gate crashers are becoming a major problem to the railroads. They now smash, on the average, over 100 gates a month on just one railroad alone in California, forcing it to stock spare parts at many crossings so that vital protection can be quickly restored. And there are those follow-the-leader motorists who blindly follow other gamblers like sheep being led to slaughter. That strong follow-the-leader instinct can lead to disaster in still another crossing situation. Too often, thoughtless drivers let themselves get trapped, boxed in by traffic ahead of them and by traffic behind them. Make it a rule never to drive onto the track until you can drive all the way across. Though the engineer sees you, remember his train is big and heavy, and he may not be able to stop in time. But should you, for any reason, get stalled on the track with a train close, don't hesitate. abandon the car. And always clear the track in the direction from which the train is approaching to avoid being hit by flying wreckage. Double tracks can double cross you. All too common is the driver who waits for a train to pass, then the instant the last car goes by, shoots across to be struck by another train he didn't see traveling in the opposite direction. As you wait for a train to clear the crossing, watch out for that second track. Don't cross until you can see well down the track in both directions, and not until the warning signal has stopped. And now one final word of advice from the National Safety Council that might well save your life. Approach all railroad crossings with your car under control. First, you'll see the round advance warning sign with the big black X on it before you get to the tracks. If you're not exceeding the speed limit, this should give you plenty of time to slow down so you'll be able to make a safe stop short of the track should a train be near. Look in both directions, and if a train is coming, don't take chances. It's tricky to judge the speed of an object coming straight at you. It's probably moving twice as fast as you think. Crossing at such a time is pretty much like playing Russian roulette. Sure, you'll win most of the time, but what have you won? A minute or two of time. But if you should lose, well, is it really worth the gamble?
So I apologize if you experienced a weird internet lag there. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. Anyways, I hope I'm back. But one of the things I love about the train safety films are when they do the stop motion, like of the train layout, of like model little cars, and because I used to be, of course, when I was a kid, I used to love model railroading. I never really built an elaborate layout just because of space considerations, but this weird air. So strange. Anyways, I'm just going to keep going, and hopefully everything will be fixed. But, yeah, so when I see that, it kind of raises the back of my hair, and just like, ooh, love that little layout. And, of course, you know, it references the Addams Family TV show when Gomez would always wreck his model train. Of course, it was always, he would just blow it up, but, you know, I can imagine as he got more elaborate, he would have cars crash into trains. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, this next film is, I'm going to actually check to make sure I haven't shown it already. I'm going to check that real quick. I've been maintaining a database of, or a spreadsheet of everything we've shown so far. Alright, I haven't seen it. Okay. So this next film is, there's no broadcasting. Let me just see. I'm sorry, this is, okay, everything seems to be fine here. Alright, just everything is a delay as far as errors go. Alright, this next film talks about how great oil is, and how great oil is for our country, and how it impacts a day in the life of America, of perpetuating society and making things awesome. So here's 24 Hours of Progress.
The production of oil is a measure of American progress. As our nation grows, so grows our need for petroleum. This year, every 24 hours, 6.5 million barrels of petroleum will be drawn from the earth by our producing oil companies. How will it all be used? Let's start at midnight and watch what happens on any single day. Let's say it's Tuesday. In the early hours down on the Gulf of Mexico, a new source of oil is being sought. If this well comes in, it will not only help to fuel planes, cars, and ships, and make us strong in arms, it will also serve America in many ways of which we may not be aware. It even plays a part in the operating room where petroleum byproducts appear as the drugs, the alcohol, and anesthetics that may help to save a life or start one. It's morning now, 7:31. The sun is shining somewhere in the Middle West on the construction of an 8-lane superhighway. The ancient Romans were road builders too, but they had slaves to do the work. Today we push our roads just where we want them to go. Now the strength in a man's back or in his arms is not important. It's the strength he controls at his fingertips that counts. Now at a West Coast airport, the 815 plane bound east across the continent is being fueled with gasoline from one of thousands of competing oil companies. Competition among these companies assures our progress, just as competition helped make the change from the Conestoga wagon to the Constellation. We Americans can compete because we're free to fly 3,000 miles across one united land with only a ticket and a baggage check as our passport. In the United States, 9 o'clock in the morning means time for school. Mrs. George W. Martin starts on her first errand of the day, to get gasoline for the car. To Mrs. Martin, her service station is the oil industry. 95% of America's service stations are run by independent businessmen, like Ed Felix. He is an oil man, and like the industry he represents, he knows all about competition. He knows that to compete successfully, he must do more than sell gasoline and oil. He must give service, the kind that will make his station the favorite in town. As the day moves on, and as the Ed Felixes all over the country serve their public, the American farmer is also using up petroleum and many of its products. Oil does scores of jobs farmers would once have thought were miracles. Today, with petroleum, a farmer can fight the odds of nature instead of giving in to them. It becomes easy now to see why new oil must constantly be found. Out here in California, a geophysical crew is taking the first step, making a seismograph survey of what a piece of land looks like underground. They start by placing dynamite in shallow holes filled with water. Then they explode the dynamite. The sound waves are recorded as they echo off the underground formation. But the seismograph picture just tells where oil might be. The only way of actually finding it is to drill. On this Tuesday afternoon in West Texas, a producing company is getting ready to do just that, drill a well. They know that 8 out of every 9 wells drilled in new areas turn out to be dry holes. But even then, they're willing to risk as much as $1 million on a single well, just on the chance of striking oil. Between the crude oil from the ground and finished petroleum products is the refinery. Just 4 decades ago, a refinery was a primitive still making mostly kerosene. Today, some of these great plants employ thousands of people. To many an American community, their establishment and growth has meant new economic life. Every day, vast quantities of oil move out by tank car and by great pipeline systems. One of the biggest carriers of oil is the modern tanker. This one will carry 5 million gallons of petroleum products. While the tanker is loading in California, an oil barge is heading up the Mississippi for the docks of an independent jobber. And in New York at 3 p.m. this Tuesday, the SS America is taking on fuel. Since petroleum provides the power for our ships of peace and ships of war, oil power means sea power for our nation. Power for the sea is also power for the land. The automobile has been a major factor in the growth of our country. To meet the demands of motorists who drive 1 billion miles a day, oil canning plants also work around the clock. It seems no other people in the world want so much to just get going when they have a little time. Maybe it's just that no other people can get going so easily. The oil scientists are pace setters in the race of progress, working with products still unnamed and some that are still unthought of. Our thousands of privately managed oil companies invest millions of dollars every year in research. Each company's objective is the same: discover a new product, perfect it, and get it on the market before the others do. They start with competition. What they create is progress. With the switch to another brand of gasoline, or with the purchase of a new detergent, a company has lost a customer. Another company has gained one. Our Mrs. Martin just today has already used some 87 petroleum products, including the plastic bacon wrapper and the wax of the milk carton. Mrs. Martin is the customer, and the customer is the boss of the oil industry. This Tuesday's daylight has almost gone. Electric power stations are getting ready for peak load. Even though the old oil lamp is a thing of the past, oil still helps light up America. Our Tuesday is ending. The air travelers from the west have crossed a whole continent in a few hours. But not for 1 mile were they out of sight of the men and women of the petroleum industry. The night shift at the refinery has taken over on the stills and fractionating columns. At Ed Felix's, there's still someone to give you service. At the well on the Gulf, the drilling bit, chewing at the rock beneath the bayou, may be closer to oil than it was last night. It is midnight again. Our Tuesday has waned and is gone. In the oil fields, the pump continues hour by hour throughout the 24. It pumps from Tuesday into Wednesday without a halt. Each day, every day, it brings us another 24 hours of progress, guarding its security, assuring the future of America.
I am sorry about that. I had a piece of software that completely freaked out on my Mac and just kind of took all the resources away. I hope we're still connected. Kind of frustrating, but yeah. Anyways, so I asked if there were any kids watching, because this next film was awesome, but it's adult. It's not like it would show on television. I'm gonna rewind it a little bit. You see behind me the telecine. But it's adult themed. There's not anything I'm sorry explicit. about that. I had a piece of software that completely freaked out on my Mac. But just hold on, everything's freaking out. All the resources away. I hope we're still connected. All right. Chaos. All right, so we're back. This film it's adult, but it's not. It's adult themed, but it's not. Anyways, you'll get it. You'll understand it. I just didn't want to have a parent have to have this awkward conversation with their kids about what they're watching, because it deals with sex, but not explicit. But it's awesome nonetheless. It's called A Rose by Any Other Name. Enjoy.
Good evening, Mrs. Gordon. I'm so happy to see you.
Good evening, Mr. Morris. I missed you at the bingo game tonight.
I missed you, too.
So why didn't you come down? Do you feel all right?
Oh, sure. But my son in Chicago usually calls me on Thursday, so I stayed in my room.
And how is your son?
He didn't call.
Next time, don't wait around. They'll pay you, and your son can afford to wait.
I think you're right.
You should have been down there. It was the first time I ever won.
And what was the grand prize?
A bag of charms. Am I being silly?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think you need any more charms.
I brought these for you, but I kept the green one.
You're such a comfort, Rose. If I thought I could depend on you, I'd even give up my hot water bottle.
You can depend, Mr. Morris. You can depend.
Give me a chance to talk with her. I'm sure we can straighten it out. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Goodbye. How can she? What's happened to her?
What's the matter?
A 79-year-old woman just doesn't do that sort of thing.
What sort of thing?
I mean, she was on the waiting list for 2 years. We finally got her in, and now...
Marcia, I don't know what you're talking about. What's wrong?
The director of the nursing home says he's going to have to ask her to take Mom out if she keeps this up. Then what?
Keeps what up?
My mother has been found for the second time sleeping with a male resident.
Rose?
Gotta be senility.
Well, maybe she's not so senile. It only happened to us when we were 80, eh, baby?
Oh, Charles, can't you be serious for once? This is my mother we're talking about.
Okay, Marcia, I'm sorry. I'll be serious. Now look. They can't just throw her out. I've read that contract. There's not a word in it about sex.
Hello, Ma.
Marcia, how nice. I didn't expect you today. Sit down, dear.
Oh, the room looks nice.
It's a while since you've been here.
Well, I hadn't really expected to come here today, but, well, you see, Mr. Anderson told me to talk to you.
Really? He told you?
Look, Ma, Mr. Anderson called me. He was pretty upset. He said that you had been discovered in bed with a Mr. Morris, and that it had happened before with a Mr. Green.
Oh. Well, Mr. Green died 3 months ago. But Mr. Morris is still alive.
Yes, I know, and you've been visiting him at night. And that's creating problems.
Problems? Marcia, I've been thinking about the teddy bear.
What teddy bear, Ma?
The one you lost in Asbury Park.
Oh, Ma, listen to me. You just gotta stop.
Woggy. That's what you called him. Woggy, remember?
Yes.
That night you cried and cried. We took you into our bed, and right away you fell asleep. And I remember when you went to camp. You wrote how homesick you were. And when we came to see you, you didn't want to let us go. I remember when Charles was in the army. You just couldn't wait until he came home from Korea. Does anybody ever stop needing?
Oh, Ma. We don't make the rules here. Mr. Anderson does. And he says either you gotta stop what you're doing, or they'll have to take action.
So they won't let me play bingo for a couple of weeks?
You don't understand. They're gonna throw you out.
You mean, I'll have to leave here? But all my friends are here. This is my home. They'll ask me to leave?
I'm sorry, Ma.
Marcia, tell Mr. Anderson. I'll stop.
Right, Jim. The financial statement will be in your hands before the board meets on the 15th. Yes?
I'm Marcia Williams.
Right, okay, I'll see you then. Yes, of course, Mrs. Gordon's daughter. Please, sit down.
Mr. Anderson, I've just seen my mother.
I appreciate your talking with her. You were able to convince her of our position.
Your ultimatum was very convincing. She really had no choice.
Does that mean she's willing to stop visiting people at night?
Yes, my mother has agreed.
Good, I'm very glad.
Well, I'm not so sure I am. I came here all set to scold her or to understand senility, but none of that happened.
You handled it very well, I'm sure.
Well, I helped kick the stuffing out of her.
Now, just a...
My mother has feelings. She's not a checkroom package.
I don't think we can be accused of treating our people as package.
It's just that all these rules...
They are essential. Our residents expect a dignified atmosphere. There is also the reputation of our home to consider.
Well, I wish you'd forget about your reputation and think about my mother's feelings.
I'm sorry, she'll just have to adjust.
I think she's extremely well adjusted.
Thank you very much for your help, Mrs. Williams.
All right, Mr. Anderson. I get the message.
That's 25 points for you, Mr. O'Connor.
About time. My deal?
Oh, Mr. Morris. Aren't you going to join us? I saved a seat for you.
No, not today.
Why not? Aren't you going to give us a chance to... get even with you?
I'm too old to play games, Rose.
Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris, it's long distance from Chicago. Your son is calling.
So?
Well, come on, hurry. He's waiting.
I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Maybe you better get somebody to sit in for me.
May I? As you probably know, I talked with your daughter. I'm glad you understand our position and agree with us.
I don't agree with you.
I thought your daughter discussed this with you.
You're asking me to give up my private life.
No, I'm only asking you to stop creating problems.
If you didn't poke into my privacy, there would be no problems.
Look, I am your friend, and I want everyone here to think of me as their friend. We're all a family, really, and it's my job to keep things running smoothly. You know, I'm surprised that a respectable woman like you, Mrs. Gordon, would want to put herself in such an undignified position.
You make it sound so terrible. What was terrible was last night. Mr. Morris and I have become lonely people again. Look at him over there. Today he's an old man. Do you know about loneliness, Mr. Anderson? Do you know there's a woman in this room who never gets any visitors, so she hoards in on other people's company? And about the poor woman who sends herself gifts, pretending they come from relatives? And do you realize...
You are deliberately confusing the issue. I ask you again, Rose, be reasonable. Don't force
And I
me.
ask you, Mr. Anderson, suppose you lived here.
You're leaving me no alternative.
You mean you're going to expel me?
I am responsible for the running of this institution, and I am not going to allow you to sleep with other residents. Think it over, Mrs. Gordon.
This is Miss Muller, the night supervisor. Open up. They call the security guard?
I'm sorry. You're leaving me no alternative, Mrs. Gordon.
an awesome film. Somebody wrote a very special episode of Golden Girls. I mean, as I get older, I'm hoping that I will have a fruitful sex life and that I will not be dictated by a Mr. Anderson or a nosy night nurse supervisor. And probably the baby boomers are gonna change all of this with Viagra and all these other things, and there will be so many of them. It'll be like, oh, you know what? Just let them have sex and let's not make a big deal of it. Yeah, this is part of I've got a bunch of films that deal with seniors, dealing with aging, and this is part of dignity, right? Being able to have sex when you want, with who you want. Yeah. So AV Geeks, pro seniors having sex. Yay. All right. Again, I apologize for the technical problems at the end. I don't know, the Mac OS sometimes, a little app that doesn't cause any problems suddenly decides it's going to take all the resources of the computer and everything stops. And try to limit that from happening in the future, but it's annoying nonetheless. So tomorrow, we'll see you. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. You can buy us coffee. That's one way you can say thank you. Another way you can say thank you is by liking or subscribing, either on Facebook or YouTube or whatever platform you're on. And also going to avgeeks.com. Thank you for your support and tuning in and your comments. It's always great. As I've said before, I would probably show these films in a vacuum. So it's actually nice to see people seeing them and responding in funny, interesting ways. So thank you for that. And we'll see you again. Again, I will end with this awesome film can. Sometimes things are written inside of film cans and it says, please rewind, and a smiley face and a peace sign, and please love each other. That's such a great thing. So everybody take care, and we will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.